Welcome back guys, and in this video of JavaScript nuts and bolts, I'll be showing you why it is always good to declare variable before using them. So without further ado, let us dive in and see how this plays out. So I'll open my inspector tool here, then I'll go to the console. On the console here, let me just create a function, a simple function. Just say let's call this function just test, and of course it is a function, and inside here I want to have a value. Let us call this value test1 equals to 2. Remember, I haven't declared this variable. I've just initialized it without really declaring it. Yeah. So the next thing I want to do here, I want to console log test1 like so, and then outside of this function that is down here, I want to call this function, and also what I want to show you is that I want to console.log again this variable outside of this function. In this case, I just console log test1, and now if I run this code, let's see what will happen. Something quite interesting happened because we get a value of 2, that is for calling this function, and again we get a value of 2 for console logging this function, which simply means that this variable, in this case, when you initialize it this way without really declaring it, it means it becomes global. It can't be accessed anywhere. I know guys, you might be thinking what is really wrong with doing this. But let me just give you a concrete example so that you can see how this can be one of the worst programming practices ever on earth. So you see our function here, I'm going to rename this function to, let us say, outer. And inside here, I'm going to have a for loop. I'm not going to initialize this I. I'm just going to say I equals to 0. And then for now, let us say I is less than 3. And also let us say I plus plus for this case. And then for now, let us call another function that we are going to create, which is inner. And then let me just remove these guys here. So I'm going to copy this function here, and I'm going to paste down here, and I'm going to call this second function inner, and I'm going to say when I is less than 5, and instead here I'm going to console.log, and I'm going to console.log I, right? Console.log I. So what I'm going to do now, down here I'm going to call the outer function. Before I run this code, let me just explain to you guys what I've done here. So I've created an outer function, and for this function I've used a for loop, and this for loop is supposed to run 3 times, right? That is, starting from 0 it runs the first time, then it will add 1 to 0 and then compare. Is 1 less than 3? Yes. Run the second time, and then it will add again 1 to I, which is now 1, which will become 2. Is 2 less than 3? Yes. And it will run the third time. So basically our function here outer is supposed to run 3 times, right? So I expect this function here, when I call this outer function, to run this inner function here 3 times. So, and what the inner function does is that it simply console logs 0 to 4. 0 to 4. That is, since we are looking up to 4. If I is less than 5. In this case, it will run 5 times. Yeah. 0 to 4, 5 times. So this inner function, let me just comment this guy out and just call the inner function here, and then enter. You see it prints 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the inner function prints 0 to 4. So when I call it using the outer function 3 times, I expect it to print 0 to 4 3 times. So this is what I mean. And comment this guy again. As you expect, guys, expect to see that when I run the outer function, it will print 0 to 4 3 times since it is calling the inner function 3 times. So I'm going to call the outer function here and now run this code. And surprisingly is that when I call the outer function, it only prints 0 to 4, which means it has run the inner function once. And you might be wondering why is that so? Actually, before I explain this, let me just show you when I declare these variables now. So when I declare let here, when I declare I using let, then I also put let here, and then now again call my function outer. You see now it prints this function how many times? 3 times. 0 to 4, this is first time. Then 0 to 4, this is the second time. Then 0 to 4, which is the third time. Which means now when I declare these variables using let, the function runs as expected. When I remove these guys, let, when I remove them and the variables are now not declared and I run this function, it only runs once. And why is that so? This is because without declaring these variables, I becomes a global variable, right? And when it becomes a global variable, then this function will run once. And by the time it is finishing to run that first time, since I is global, now using the second function here, inner function, I has been incremented up to 5. So now our outer function here will be checking the new I, the global I, which is 5. And since 5 is not less than, then this function won't by any means run again, right? So the first time this function runs, since I is global, this I will also be changed, or rather will be modified using the second function, the second inner function. And since the second inner function ends up with 5, now this function, this I here, will end up having a value of 5 once the inner function has finished running on the first instance. And so I, the new value of I here will be 5. And as a result, our for loop here won't be able to run the second and the third time since I has already reached 5. Hope guys you have understood that. Let me just go back and write my good code. So it is always good guys to have your function, or rather to have your variables be declared with this let keyword. Later I'll be speaking about the const and the var keyword, but for now it is always good while working with function and blocks to declare your variables using this let keyword, and thus preventing your variables which should be used uh, inside your block to be a global variable. So it's always a good practice that you declare your variables using let. In fact, even if your variable is a global variable, it's always good to declare it with a let keyword or a const keyword. So guys, that is what I wanted to share with you. Make sure you always declare your variables while using them. It will save you a lot of errors. And for that, happy coding. Leave a like, leave a comment, please share. And until we meet again, guys, bye bye.